please come to a very important chapter, portfolio management. And this is very important because it is a base for many other chapters. For example, you will require the knowledge of portfolio management in chapters like valuation of share, where to value equity share you require CAPM formula. In chapters on business valuation, in chapters like mergers and acquisition, derivatives, forex, mutual fund. So next many chapters are actually based on the concept that you are going to learn in portfolio management. So what is the weightage in the exam? In the exam, the weightage can range from 8 marks to 20 marks. Up to 22 marks also you can expect from this chapter. This chapter requires a lot of mathematical skills, and it is based on a lot of statistics. So I am sure you would enjoy the statistics that we are going to apply in this chapter. First few minutes, we will just create a background of portfolio management. You may be aware that this is one of the highly growing field of profession, and you can also practice in the field of portfolio management. You can provide PMS service, portfolio management service, which is popularly called nowadays as PMS service to the client, and you can get some fees, or you can even share the profit of the profit made by the client's portfolio. So understand this chapter. This chapter is a blend of theory and practice. So we will discuss theory part also, and we are going to solve practical questions also. Very useful in the practice also, day-to-day life also. After learning this chapter, maybe some of you will be inspired, and you will also start creating your own portfolio out of the lakhs of rupees you have earned in stipend. So let us begin this wonderful chapter, portfolio management. What is portfolio? What is portfolio? So when I use the word portfolio in financial management, what does it mean? So portfolio means a group of securities. Portfolio means a group of securities held by the investor. So this is the portfolio, which will include equity share, which will include preference shares, which may include bank FD, gold, government security, land, debenture. So all these different types of securities, different types of assets held by an investor is called portfolio. So portfolio may have 2 or more securities. Portfolio means total holding of securities belonging to a person. So today you will go home and ask your father, parent, anybody near your home, uncle, sir, tell me what is your portfolio? What are the different securities you are holding? And I am going to help you with your portfolio management, right? Now I am going to ask you a question. Take a piece of paper, visualize where can we invest? Where can we invest? Suppose you have 10 crore rupees. Okay. Exercise for you. You have 10 crores rupees, or you can even imagine a higher amount. I don't mind. Where would you invest this money? So write down at least 10 areas where you will invest. If you are writing equity share, then write only once. Don't write equity share of Reliance, equity share of Infosys, equity share of TCS and like that. That would be cheating. Equity share, treat it as 1. Preference share, treat it as 2. Debenture, 3 examples I have given. Add some more. 5 seconds more. Write down. Let us see who can write maximum number of avenues where he can invest. So check. I have also prepared a small list. Equity shares, preference shares, bonds. Bonds means some government bonds. Debenture means private sector debt security. Mutual funds, post office deposit, land and real estate, gold, silver together, PPF, bank fixed deposit, derivative products, futures option that we are going to see in subsequent chapter. Nowadays people invest in paintings of renowned painters also. This list is not exhaustive. Some students are saying write silver also, okay. Some of you are asking to write NSC. So when you go to post office, they give different options like National Savings Certificate, Kisan Vikas Patra KVP, then Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, recurring deposit option, saving account, FD. So you should know all this so that you can go to your nearby post office and you can make investment according to your requirements, right? These are the places where we can invest. The story is not over. Equity share is one class of asset, and you can see there are more than say 4,500 shares listed on the Bombay Stock Exchange or National Stock Exchange. So you can invest in shares of different companies. So here also you will have thousands of options to invest. Same thing here, same thing in case of bonds, same thing in case of debenture. And don't ask about mutual funds. There are thousands of mutual fund schemes where you can invest. So this way, now you have so many avenues where you can invest. The question would be, in which security to invest, how much to invest, how to calculate the return, how to calculate the risk, how should we reshuffle our portfolio. So that is all about portfolio management. So next paragraph number 3, meaning of portfolio management. What is portfolio management? In the previous few minutes you have seen what is portfolio. Now what is portfolio management? So portfolio management means management of your portfolio efficiently. What do you mean by efficiently? So that you get the maximum return at the lowest possible risk, so that one can maximize his return and minimize the risk. So portfolio should be managed in such a manner that total risk is minimized while expected return is maximized. So two terms I am going to repeat many times in this chapter. Returns are to be maximized. Given alternatives, given choices, given different options, I will select that option which will maximize the return. And second thing, risk should be minimized. Between two options, if they are offering same return, we will try to minimize the risk. Risk should be minimized, and that is what portfolio management does. Third point, portfolio management means choosing the one best portfolio to suit the risk and return preferences of the investors, right? Different investors may have different risk return preference. So there is a 20-year-old chap, young person, third year of articleship. Then there may be a 50-year-old person, he is into job, earning some salary. And there is a retired person who is 70-year-old retiree. This is salaried person and he is a student or recently qualified CA, CS, CMA, MBA, engineer, whatever you call. Will the portfolio be the same for all the three investors? A 20-year-old, 50-year-old, 70-year-old person? The answer is no. A 20-year-old person can take risk. He has a long career ahead of him. He can earn a lot of salary, lot of income. So he can take a risk. So what we will advise him, that you invest in equity, say 70%. Again, the ratio can be different for different people. And in the debt and liquid assets like cash, bank, saving account, post office deposit, FD, 30%. But now the person is of 50 years of age. He cannot take so much of risk like a 20-year young person. So then for him we may advise that you can have a 50-50, 50% equity, 50% debt, or maybe some of them are even more conservative. Then we can say 40% equity, 60% debt. And I have found people who can't even invest 40% in equity. They may go for 20% equity, 80% debt. Now this is an old retired person, no source of income except pension income. He only gets pension. Some of the old people don't even get pension also. He had taken gratuity and he had taken lump sum pension at the time of retirement. Where would he invest? In equity, maybe just 5 to 10%, and he will invest 90-95% in fixed income security like bond, FD, post office deposits, like that. So as a portfolio manager, you can't have one size fits all policy. In case of portfolio management, one size fits all is not possible, because different people have different risk and return preference, different needs, different family background, different income background, different age groups are there, then female and male differences would be there. So maybe a male investor can take a higher risk, but we can't generalize it. Female investor can also take very high risk. So therefore one has to create a portfolio which suits the risk return preferences of the investor. Portfolio management also involves revision of the portfolio. What do you mean by revision of the portfolio? Same person, when he was 20 years of age, his combination was 70% equity, 30% debt. As he ages and now he is suppose 50 years, the ratio changes from 70% in equity to 40% in equity and 60% in debt. And as he grows older, his age is 70 years, it may be 5 to 10% in equity and 90 to 95% in debt. This is one reason for revision of the portfolio. Second, the risk appetite of the person can change. A person may not like to take the same risk. He wants to reduce his risk. So the same person can say, no, I now want only 50-50. I don't want to expose myself to such a high risk. Risk return preferences of the investors can change. The economic environment can change. The economic environment can become more uncertain. Then people would prefer to invest in fixed income securities, safe securities. So portfolio management involves revision of your portfolio periodically so that it will meet your risk return preferences, which have also changed. Now, should we manage our portfolio on our own or should we give our portfolio to be managed by a professional portfolio manager? Why do we need portfolio managers? What is the role of portfolio manager? So suppose tomorrow you also become portfolio manager. Possible. Many of our past students are now acting as professional portfolio managers. Some of them come to me also and ask me that they want to manage my portfolio, but then I can manage on my own. But can everybody manage his portfolio on his own? Suppose there is one Mr. VK, Virat Kohli. Okay, he earns lot of money on the field, off the field. In a year he earns 300 crore rupees, suppose. I don't know, guesswork. Will he manage his funds himself? He does not have time. Most of his time goes into playing matches, international tours, practicing, advertisement. Where will he get time to read the annual report? Mr. Virat Kohli, do you read annual report? Do you analyze the company's balance sheet? Do you know ratio analysis? Do you know how to invest? Where to invest? When to invest? When to sell? No. That is not your specialty. You may be super specialist in one department, that is cricket. But investment is altogether a different skill. So therefore, you require a portfolio manager so that they can manage these funds efficiently. They will decide when, where, when to invest. So first reason why portfolio managers are needed, that many investors lack awareness and they do not have the time to do research on his own. You can check today, go to your neighbor, ask him, do you know about mutual fund? Do you know about sovereign gold fund? Do you know about ETF, exchange traded fund? Do you know about shares of Cipla, Ranbaxy, Jubilant, TCS, Infosys, Bajaj Auto, Reliance? He will say, no, I don't know. What are these? I know only post office deposit. That is near to my home. I go there and deposit my money. I know only that bank FD. This is only I know. I keep all my other cash income in gold or silver. So many of the investors lack awareness. They don't know what are the options available. And even if they know, they don't know whether we should invest it or not, what are the features of this, whether I will get adequate return or not. Second reason is investors do not have time to do research on his own. Lack of time. A doctor, super specialist, okay, heart surgeon. In a day he does 4 or 5 operations. Throughout the day he is busy shifting from one hospital to another and earns lakhs of rupees a month. But he does not have the time to do research on his own, because in the equity market also, if you want to invest, this will be the problem you will also face. There are so many shares, thousands of shares are there. Even if you narrow down the list to some of the best companies, there will be at least 100 best companies in the country. Where to invest? Because you need to do some research. You have to check their profitability, their liquidity, their management, capital structure, debt equity ratio, past performance, dividend history. Do you have time? No. Take the help of a portfolio manager. He will charge some fees, but then he will give you proper advice. Investment involves some technicalities. Some investments are simple, like when you go to a bank FD, you hand over the money, they will give you a FD receipt. But in other cases like investment in shares, you need to open a demat account. For investment in sovereign gold funds, there are some technicalities involved. You need some demat account, you need a bank account, you need to connect the two, you need to give some KYC document, know your customer. Then you should know how to operate a demat account, how to place an order on demat. So some technicalities are involved. Not everybody can do that. Although if you try to learn, you can, but we don't have time. We don't have inclination to learn the technicalities. Some people are scared of filling the forms. Some people are bored of filling the forms. So therefore they need portfolio manager. Third reason, a large number of instruments are available. Look at your notebook, you have written 5 minutes back. I had asked you a question, where can you invest? And then you have written 15 items, more than that. Where to invest is another challenge. Even suppose you want to invest in equity share, there are thousands of options. You want to invest in mutual fund, there are thousands of schemes. Where to invest, because there are large variety of instruments to choose from. Security markets are volatile. Those who observe security market will see that Sensex was 41,000 points, then it dropped, it became 24,000 points, again it rising 39,000 points. So this is very volatile. If your wealth was 41 crore rupees here, your wealth will become, say for example, approximately 24 crore. In a span of 4 months, you can lose half of your wealth. So that is why people are scared of investments in shares, mutual funds, because it's a volatile market. They can't handle that pressure, the tension, the stress which the security market can bring in a volatile time. Here comes the role of portfolio manager. He says, you don't worry, we are taking care of your volatility. We will diversify your portfolio in such a manner that you are not affected much. Fifth reason why we need the portfolio manager, they help us to make informed and intelligent choices between alternative investment opportunities. So he will tell you, buy this share, buy this investment, invest in this land, so that your overall return can be maximized, risk can be minimized. Portfolio managers provide you other services also. Like for example, they will give you some tips, okay, where to make the investment, and therefore you can earn more income. One question tick mark from this page, what are the functions of portfolio manager? Tomorrow you will also become portfolio manager. What will you do? Is it a very easy task as it appears to be? The answer is no. It is one of the most challenging tasks to become a portfolio manager, because security market is very volatile. Security market is very uncertain. It is affected by a large number of economic factors. So first thing you have to do is to study the economic environment affecting the capital market and the client investment. You have to read the economic policies of the government. You have to understand the monetary policy of RBI. You have to also understand any economic event taking place at the international forum. So if US Federal Reserve reduces the interest rate, that might affect the stock market in India. If US government puts an import ban on Chinese product, that may affect the stock market in India and consequently the value of the investment of the client. Second thing, you have to study the security market. Not only how the Bombay stock exchange or national stock exchange are performing, you have to also see the American stock exchanges, Nasdaq, Dow Jones, Japanese stock exchange, okay, Hong Kong stock exchange, then UK stock exchange, how they are performing, because if they fall on a certain day, the repercussions, the ripple effect is in India also, and Indian stock market also get affected. Portfolio manager has to keep a track of the latest policies of RBI, government and such authorities like SEBI, which can affect the valuation of shares. Portfolio manager has to study the problems of industry affecting security market and the attitude of the investor. After studying the government policy, RBI policy, he must also understand how a particular industry operates. What are the problems of that industry? How it will affect the valuation? For example, if your automobile industry, you depend on imported component, import duty may rise, exchange rate may rise. In automobile industry, there is a labor shortage, so production can get affected. Similarly, if you are a power sector company, then lack of raw material like coal may be there, and therefore the industry cannot function at its optimum capacity. To study the financial behavior of development financial institution and other players. Nowadays, which players is the stock market? These are the big players like FII, Foreign Institutional Investor, Domestic Financial Institution, DFI, like for example life insurance company. It's a big player in the market. They can also buy shares in large quantity. Then mutual funds, they are also big buyers in the market, big players in the market. Their behavior you have to understand. So therefore you have to study statistics like what was the net investment made by FII during this month, this year, whether they have withdrawn more money, brought more money, in which sector the FIIs are investing, where they are withdrawing, because that will affect the security prices. Portfolio manager has to give counseling to his prospective clients, because many clients which come, they don't have much idea about investment. They don't really know in which share he should buy, how to make the investment, how to start investing in mutual fund, how to open a demat account, how to buy, how to operate so many investment. Then give him the necessary counseling. Many people, in the absence of information, they keep their money in the saving account. They keep their money in the saving account, which does not generate much income, because he has no idea where to invest. Next point is to carry out investment in security on behalf of the clients to attain maximum return at lesser risk. So he will do investment on behalf of his client. He will take the signature of the client on different forms necessary. He will take the power of attorney in some cases, and then he will carry out all the investment on behalf of the client. And they offer some value added services also, like tax planning, collection of dividend, safe custody of securities, all other registration and transfer formalities, all documentation work, which many people hate. They do it on behalf of their clients. So these are the role of portfolio managers. Objectives of portfolio management. What are the objectives of portfolio management applicable to you in future also when you become a portfolio manager? Keep these objectives in mind. First is invest in such avenues where at least your principal is safe, that is not lost. So do not take too much of risk by investing in very risky securities where even your principal may be lost. Second is portfolio should generate stable income. Regular income. So invest in securities which pays you interest regularly, which pays you dividend regularly, or in case of real estate which pays rental regularly. You need regular income for your day-to-day survival, day-to-day expenditure. Portfolio management should not only aim at stability of income, it should also ensure that your capital grows over a period of time. Your capital should also appreciate, and that is why we invest in equity shares, mutual fund, land, gold, because we know these are appreciating securities. You must ensure that there is a market for your investment. In future, you may need to convert them into cash. Can you sell them? Don't make such investment for which there is no market available. When you are going to sell it and you will find there is no buyer, then what is the use of that investment? So there must be marketability of the investment without much loss of time and without much loss of value. Without much loss of time, without much loss of value, you should be able to sell your security. That you have to ensure, otherwise your money will get stuck and it is of no use to you. Even if you own a piece of land in some country, but you can't go there, you can't sell it, there is no point. Investment should offer liquidity. These 2 points are quite related. That means you should be able to sell them without loss of time and without loss of value. Sometime we may require funds in emergency. Somebody has fallen sick at home and you need 5 lakh for hospitalization and other treatment. You have invested in some kind of tax saving bond which has a lock-in period of 7 years. Now you can't sell that investment. So even though you may have investment of 5 lakh rupees, you can't sell it, you can't convert into cash, and to meet these hospitalization expenses, you will have to borrow from friends or banks and pay a high rate of interest. So do not put your money in such investment which will make it illiquid and you can't use it. Of course, some portion of your funds can go into that when you are damn sure that you don't need it. But if you need it, then you need to park your money in liquid asset which can be easily, quickly and without loss of value can be converted into cash. Portfolio should diversify your risk. Do not put all your eggs in one basket. Do not put all your eggs in one basket. What does that mean? Do not invest in one single security or a single avenue. So you may think that, oh, this company, for example, Reliance Industries is the best. So you have sold all other securities. Whatever money you had put everything in one share. And suppose the share price tanks, goes down substantially for some or the other reason. So your 50 lakh rupees which you had invested, your hard-earned money, may become say 20 lakh rupees in a span of few weeks. So if you diversify, you will not lose all your money at a time. Some security may have losses, but others may have gain. And therefore your loss will be compensated by gain in another. One of the important areas of portfolio management is to understand diversification. Try to diversify your portfolio so that your risk is minimized. And last but not the least, it should help you to save tax also. Under the income tax laws, there are several sections under which if you make certain investments, that will help you to save taxes. Since you are more competent than me as far as income tax is concerned, I will say list here, but one section which I know is section 80C, where if you make investment in some securities you get deduction, or if you invest in equity linked saving scheme of mutual fund you get deduction. Then there are capital gain bonds where you can invest and you can get some deduction. You can invest in items like PPF, LIC, you can get some tax deduction. So try to make the maximum benefit of tax deductibility. But now one interesting thing, all these objectives may be competing with each other. For example, if you want to get tax advantage, liquidity will be compromised, because all the tax deduction schemes where you save taxes have a lock-in period ranging from 3 to 7 years, maybe more. Like in case of PPF, the lock-in period is even more. If you want the security of the principal, then you have to compromise on the capital growth. So therefore, portfolio management is a balance between all these objectives. You will try to obtain maximum benefit from portfolio management. Paragraph number 8 is very important, activities in portfolio management. Now slowly and slowly we are entering into portfolio management activities. First, what you will do, identify the asset or securities and allocation of investment and identifying asset class. So first thing, in simple terms, where will you invest? Where will you invest? Make a list. Make a list, sit down sometime, make a list where you will invest. According to your risk taking ability, you can make a list like equity share I want to invest, mutual fund I want to invest, I want to invest in debt security, I want to invest in gold and real estate. This is what one investor has identified for himself. After deciding where will you invest, next you have to decide how much. You have to decide the proportion in different asset class. According to your risk taking abilities, you will decide the proportion. For example, somebody may have this proportion, 50% equity, 20% mutual fund, 10% debt, 10% gold, 10% real estate. Somebody would like 30% equity, 50% mutual fund, 5% debt, 5% gold, and maybe 10% real estate. This is what you have to decide. Investor will sit down with his portfolio manager and decide. And after you have decided to invest in these securities, this asset class, go to the third step where you have to identify the specific asset which you need to invest. A specific asset. So equity, I have decided to invest in equity. In step number 3, what I'll do, I will identify the shares where I will invest. So I will invest in, for example, TCS company, Wipro, Hero, Motocorp, Larsen and Toubro, Bajaj Auto, Reliance, Infosys, okay, whatever. So he will decide about the shares. Similarly, he will decide about different mutual fund schemes where he will invest. So this is my third step. So this is how the portfolio management activities begin, and then in future you have to continuously revise it, reshuffle your portfolio according to your changing preferences. One question which they have asked in the exam is this question: sources of risk. When you are going to make investment, be aware about the risk that you are taking. No investment is risk-free. Every investment will have some or the other risk involved. Every investment will have some or the other risk involved. For example, if you invest in fixed income securities, you are exposed to interest rate risk. Sir, what is interest rate risk? Changing interest rate can affect the value of your security. Changing interest rate can affect the value of your fixed income security. So, in case if you have studied about bond valuation, so let us quickly revise in bond valuation what have you studied. If you have already studied bond valuation, increase in market interest rate will lead to decrease in bond price. This is called interest rate risk. Increase in market interest rate will decrease the value of the bond, and this is a very severe risk, because suppose market rate of interest increases by, let's say, 1%, and somebody like State Bank of India or LIC or UTI, they are holding thousands of crores of rupees of bond, the value of their bond immediately will fall by hundreds of crores of rupees. So those who are holding fixed income security and they want to sell them in the future, the value of such securities will fall. One more thing, what about decrease in market interest rate? In case of decrease in market interest rate, reinvestment income will fall. Reinvestment income will fall. That is another risk. If market rate goes up, value of bond declines. If market rate declines, reinvestment income will fall. So you have to take that risk. Another example, suppose you have invested in a floating rate bond. You have invested in a floating interest rate bond which gives you interest as the benchmark rate changes. Now the benchmark rate has declined, so your interest income will decline. So even a floating rate bond investor is exposed to the risk that interest rate may change and he will get lower income. Next risk is called inflation risk or purchasing power risk. Many people don't understand this risk. Like, for example, invest in a government bond. Government bond will give you 6% interest per annum. 100 rupees invested today, government gives me 106. I am happy. My principal is safe. I got 6 rupees interest. Now look at the inflation scenario in the country. Inflation in India is, say, 8%. It's more, but I'll write 8%. The goods and service which used to cost me 100 rupees a year back will cost you 108 rupees. You will sell this bond, realize 106 rupees, but when you go to the market to buy the same quantity of goods and service, you found that you are 2 rupees short. You can't even maintain the purchasing power of your money. This is a very serious risk with fixed income securities like government bond, bank FDs, which give you coupon rate or interest rate which is below the inflation rate. So actually you are losing. Your real return is negative. You are losing the value of your money. That is inflation risk. So unless you invest in bonds, debentures, FDs, which gives you an interest rate higher than the inflation rate, you are actually losing the purchasing power of your money. Now I will talk about business risk. This risk arises when you invest in the shares of companies. How this risk arises? When you buy the shares of company, you are a part owner of that company. Theoretically, you are also a part owner of that company. So the risk of the company is the risk of the owner. So you are also exposed to that risk. You have invested in Jet Airways. You are taking the risk of what an airline company is exposed to. It has to follow several regulations. There is a high fixed cost. Then the cost of the input may rise, and therefore this company may not be able to make enough profit, may not be able to generate positive profit. That is the risk. Or suppose you buy the shares of Reliance Power. So whatever risk a power company is exposed to, you are also exposed to that risk. If this company does not generate enough revenue, you will be losing. If it does not have raw material, it can't produce, it can't generate revenue. So you are exposed to that risk. So when you are investing in companies, understand their business model. Check whether this business model will survive in the long run or not. If not, you are exposed to that risk. Failure of a company means your shares value will be lost. Then there is a big risk called a financial risk. This risk also arises when you invest in the shares of the company or debentures of the company. Company may not be able to pay its debt on time. Company may not be able to pay its debt on time, and therefore this company may get liquidated. So as a bondholder I may lose, as a shareholder I may lose. So many examples are there near you. If you see, so companies like Kingfisher, Jet, Air India, many Anil Ambani group companies, they are heavily debt burden oriented company. So much of debt they have taken that they are liquidating, in the process of getting liquidated, like that. So if you are a bondholder, your money is stuck. If you are a shareholder, you will not get anything. So before you invest in companies, analyze their financial risk. That is why we teach debt equity ratio, we teach capital gearing ratio to the student, so that he knows when you are investing in a company, check for their debt equity, capital gearing, and accordingly you will know what is the risk. Do you know famous investors like Warren Buffett? I hope you have heard his name. What he does, when he takes the annual report of a company, he will first calculate the debt equity ratio. He will check what is the debt equity ratio of this company and whether such company should have so much of debt equity ratio. Of course, some business model will have debt equity ratio on a higher side, like a banking business, NBFC business, whose business is to borrow and lend. They will have a higher debt equity, but many companies' business model may not necessarily have high debt equity ratio. So if he finds that the debt equity ratio is high, he will simply say, no, thank you, we are not interested in investing in your company. Even when you will read the biography of Dhirubhai Ambani, in one page I had read that when he also makes investment in other companies, he will check what is the debt, and if he thinks that this debt is too high compared to what it should be, then you will not invest. Now, next risk I have already discussed is liquidity risk. Liquidity risk means you are not able to convert your investment into cash in short notice without loss of value. So make sure that you do not invest in illiquid assets. Sometimes it may sound attractive, but then when you go to sell it, you will not be able to sell it. Either there is no buyer or there are restrictions on sale. If you buy land in a very remote village, it may be available for a very dirt cheap price, but then when you go to sell it, you find that you are not able to find a buyer. Somebody should need that land, only then you can sell it. You invest in a government bond because government gives you tax deduction, but then you find that for 5 years you will not be able to sell. That is called liquidity risk. You buy the shares of private limited companies. Somebody says this is a good company, it has a good future, so you invest in the shares, but it is an unlisted company. You will find it very difficult to find a buyer for such unlisted companies, and that is called liquidity risk. You have the money, but you can't convert into cash, and in case the amount involved is significant, you may be in a very difficult situation to get out of it. And please remember market risk. When you are investing in the market, stock market, you are exposed to the market risk. Market value of securities can change due to many factors. So many factors can affect the value, like a global pandemic can affect the market value. Company was doing well, but there is a global recession, share price will fall. There is a war between two countries, and nowadays the war can not only be physical wars, but it can be trade war, it can be cyber war, and that can affect the whole stock market. Government policies can affect the stock market. RBI policy can affect the stock market. A competitor's announcement can affect the price of a certain share. So when you are in the market, you are exposed to such market risk over which nobody has control. So after you will become CA, you will have a big problem. Many people will think that you are very intelligent when it comes to investment, and they will ask you for tips, advice. Be very careful when you advise people about the investment, and tell them about the risk that is also involved when he is making a particular investment. Like people will ask you, in which share I should invest, in which mutual fund I should invest, should I buy this bond or not? You tell them that you should buy, but then you should also tell them that these are the risks involved, and in certain cases like share, mutual fund, you can even lose your principal. Knowingly, if you want to make the investment, you can. After knowing the risk, we can take the proper informed decision. So dear student, now the main part will begin. Up to this was theory. Now some number crunching will start. First question is, this chapter is all about risk and return. Then what is return? What do you mean by return? So you invest 100 rupees in bank FD. After a year, bank gives you 105 rupees 50 paise. What is the return? 105.50 minus 100. In rupees term 5.50, in percentage term also 5.50%. This is called return. Return is the compensation that an investor gets for parting with his liquidity. So when you invest in a bank FD, this 100 rupees you cannot now use for 1 year. You are sacrificing your liquidity and you are getting a compensation for it in the form of interest, 5 rupees 50 paise. So this 5.50 is also a form of return. In this chapter, we are going to talk more about stocks, shares. Shares are bought and sold on the basis of expected return. Why do we buy shares? Because we have an expectation. We want to earn certain rate of return. So shares are bought and sold on the basis of expected return. An expected return is based on past return. So many times for a company which is already into the stock exchange for a long time, we have the history of past return, and based on past return we form an expectation that yes, this average will be maintained. Like for example, we are going to solve questions like this. In the last 5 years, a company has generated return like this. What is your expected return? So I will take a calculator. 10 plus 12 plus 13 plus 16 plus 12 divide by 5. So the average comes to 12.6%. Average of last 5 years is 12.6%. So I will form an expectation now that if I invest in this share, I am expecting to earn, I can expect to earn a return of 12.6%, but of course expected return may not be materialized. Actual return in the next year may not be 12.6%, it can be high or it can be low, and that is the risk. But at least we have something to expect, 12.6%. So it is based on past return, or sometime we make an estimate of the future return. Next line says, expected return are calculated using simple or weighted average rate as the case may be, with probabilities of occurrence being the assigned weight. There is one more way expected return are calculated. It is based on probabilities. So it is based on future expectation. I purchase the share of a company and I expect that this share may generate 10% return with 0.2 probability. It may generate 20% return with 0.5 probability, or it may generate 30% return with 0.3 probability. So here the expected return is based on probabilities. Probabilities are being used as weights. So how do we compute the return? You will multiply these two, return into probability, and take their total. So please help me. 10 into 0.2, 2, 20 into 0.5, 10, 30 into 0.3, 9, 2 plus 10 plus 9, 21%. So the expected return is 21%. This is how expected return is calculated. So it may be either based on simple average, which I did in the earlier example, or it can be based on weighted average, where probabilities will be used as weights. Other things remaining same. Now golden rule number 1 in this chapter. This you highlight, underline, so that you will remember this is the first golden rule of this chapter. Other things remaining the same. The option with higher expected return is selected. The option with higher expected return is selected. What does that mean? If suppose there are two securities and their business model is same, let us call them security A and B, risk which is measured in standard deviation. Then your question will be, what is standard deviation? I will tell you in next few minutes, but at least some knowledge of standard deviation you must be having from your statistics classes. It is a measure of deviation of the data from their mean. That means it measures how much the data fluctuates from its average, and therefore it is a measure of risk. So just understand, for the time being the risk is same, which I will measure in standard deviation term 10%, 10. But when I compute the return, A has 12% return, B has 8% return. Now all the rational investor on earth, not earth, universe, all the rational investor in this universe will select security A. Why? He will say, when the risk is same, I will go with that option which gives me higher return. When the risk is same, I will go with that option which gives me higher return. So first golden rule is that in many questions you will be asked this query. An investor wants to invest in this share or that share. What you do? Compare their risk and return. If risk is same, choose the option which has higher return. Return can come in different forms. When you are investing, return can come in the form of dividend, or in case of debt security, interest. In case of certain securities you get bonus. In most of the security you may get capital gain, etc. available to the holder of an investment. So while calculating the return, we will take into account all these possible values and then compute our total return. So if you buy a share, for 100 rupees, that I will call P0, it gives you 10 rupees dividend, that I will call D1, and its price is 110 rupees after year 1, let us call it P1. So what is your return? Your return here is sum of the two things, 10 rupees dividend plus capital gain 10 rupees. So you have gained 20 rupees, and if I have to convert into percentage, I will divide by the initial investment value, and that comes to 20%. So this is how return is calculated. It takes into consideration all the forms of return, whether it is dividend, interest, bonus, capital appreciation. Now I will ask you to write one small example in the notebook, just to keep you awake. You also need to be writing something. Write down first chapter name, portfolio management, heading, return, now, example, now, table, action, security. There is a table with so many columns, 9 columns. Security, investment, year. Under year write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then average return, and then write down value at the end of the year 5. Value at the end of the year 5. Security, write down X. First I'll complete X. Investment is 100. Return in year 1 is 20%. 2 15%. 3 25%. 4 25%. 5 15%. Now please take the total of 20 plus 15 plus 25 plus 25 plus 15 and divide by 5, that will give you 20%. That will give you 20%. And that is called simple average return. Total of the last 5 years divided by number of years is called simple average return. And now we will compute what will be the value of this share after 5 years. So again start 100, type 100 plus 20% plus 15% plus 25% plus 25% and plus 15%, round off, it will come to 248. Then write down security Y. Initial investment 100. Year 1 return 30%. 2 minus 10%. 3 40%. 4 5%. 5 35%. Take the total of 30 minus 10 plus 40 plus 5 plus 35 divide by 5. Are you getting 20%? Yes. So here also we get the average return, simple average return 20%. And now we'll take the value at the end of year 5. Type 100 plus 30% minus 10% plus 40% plus 5% plus 35% equal to, you will find this number is 232, round off. I will ask you one question now. When the two stocks have the same average return, 20%, 20%, why their values at the end of year 5 are different? So what is the reason? First to write yourself in rough page. I think this is the reason, and then I will tell you. Most of you will get it right. The answer for that is very simple. That value at the end of the year 5 is based on compounding effect. That means when you take 100 plus 20, you are adding 15% to 120. Whereas this average return is calculated using simple average return. So it is because of simple average and compound return, that is why the values at the end are different under the two, even though their simple average return was the same. So please write down a note. The simple average for both, X and Y is equal to 10%. Sorry, 20. Simple average for both X and Y is equal to 20%. The value at the end of year 5, for X is rupees 248 and for Y is rupees 232 and for the Y is rupees 232. The difference of return with the same rate of return, is due to simple average rate of return followed. Is due to simple average rate of return followed. Next paragraph. So today you will understand one formula, the very basic formula of computing the return. So next paragraph number 11, how the return is calculated. Don't write, this is printed. Return in case of equity share will consist of two elements. Like in case of bond, it was interest plus capital gain or loss. In case of equity share, it is dividend plus capital gain or loss. So the holding period return, the formula for holding period return R is equal to dt plus pt minus pt minus 1 upon pt minus 1, or in your book it is written dt, this is easy to read, plus p1 minus p0 upon p0, which means you will get dividend plus capital gain or loss divided by initial price or beginning price at the beginning. Now understand, with the help of a rough example here, this we have done in previous chapter, bond valuation also, where it was interest. You buy the shares of, say, Reliance Industries Limited. You paid a price at the beginning 2,350 rupees. You paid the price at the beginning 2,350 rupees. During the year, this company gave you a dividend of 60 rupees. And then the price at the end of the year was 2,500 rupees. Simple question now. If you are the investor of this share, how much rate of return you have earned? So you will say, sir, this is very easy. Rate of return, I got 60 rupees dividend and I got 2,500 minus 2,350 capital appreciation, and I had to invest 2,350. So now we'll take on our calculator. 60 plus 2,500 minus 2,350 divide by 2,350 into 100. So you will say this has given me a return of approximately 8.94%. So this is called holding period return. During this period when I was holding the share, the return was 8.94%. Suppose I was holding the share for 6 months. Then annual return will be 8.94 into 2. So tell me, 8.94 into 2. 8.94 into 2 is how much? So that comes to around 17.88%. So I will say 77.88% per annum compounded half yearly. 17.88% per annum compounded half yearly. If it was held for 6 months, and if I want annualized value, I will multiply by 2 and write 17.88% per annum compounded half yearly. So this is an important formula for computing the return. Next concept we will discuss. First few minutes concept building, and then we'll enter into more advanced discussion. What do you mean by riskless securities? Riskless, no risk. That is, securities which do not involve risk are called riskless security. But then the layman will ask, I have not understood. Security which do not involve risk means what? So it means whatever returns were expected, actual return is equal to expected return. What you expected and what you got, if they are same, then we will say it's a riskless security. Risk-free security, riskless or risk-free. For example, I have invested in, let us say, National Savings Certificate, NSC, and on that NSC certificate I was promised 8% interest per annum. After 5 years, 5 years are over, I go to the post office, I present that National Savings Certificate, and if I had invested suppose 1000 rupees, they will compute interest at the rate of 8% per annum, and they will give me this amount, whatever it comes to. So what I was expecting, I will get 8% per annum compounded annually. I got 8% per annum compounded annually. That means this NSC is a risk-free security. Another example, I invest in SBI FD, fixed deposit, for 5 years. They promise me to pay interest at the rate of 5.5% per annum, compounded half yearly. So I had invested my hard-earned stipend of 1 lakh rupees. So they will give me 1 lakh into 1 plus 0.055 by 2 to the power 5 into 2. This is what I was also expecting they will give me. They gave me the same amount. This is a risk-free security. What was promised has been delivered. So investor can sleep peacefully here. This kind of securities will give you a peaceful sleep, because what is promised is delivered. Suppose there is an example, you invest 100 rupees in a security and it promises to pay you 10 rupees extra return after a year in the form of either dividend or interest, and it promises to pay you 110 rupees after 1 year as repayment of the principal. So in this case the return would be 10 rupees towards interest and 10 rupees towards capital gain, divided by 100, 20%. So this 20% is risk-free return, because what is promised is delivered. So investment in government bond, not gold. Gold is a risky security. Government security, bank FD, post office deposits may be considered as riskless security in general, because most of the time, of course there can be situation when they can fail to pay, but most of the time they deliver what is promised. So they are in general risk-free security. Then what are risky securities? Risky securities, as the name suggests, there is a possibility, there is a chance that the actual return may turn out to be different from expected return. What you were expecting and what you got, there can be deviation. Of course, the deviation can be on both the sides, positive and negative. But when we are talking from risk point of view, we are talking about a deviation on the negative side. For example, if I was expecting 18% rate of return and I got 12% return, this is a risk. But if I was expecting 18 and I got 24, this chapter does not discuss that point. It only talks about the downward possibility. Okay, the risk, the loss possibility. So risky securities are those securities where the expected return can deviate from actual return. What we forecasted and what may actually happen is called risk. And the securities which have such features are risky securities. There will be deviation from forecast. So actual return, actual cash flow can be different from expected cash flow and expected return. The price can fluctuate in either direction. It is sometimes positive also, we get more return. It may be negative also, that is we get less return. But when we are talking about risk, we are looking more at the downside possibility rather than the upside gains. Give me two examples of risky asset or risky security. One is equity shares of companies. Then second is equity oriented mutual fund. Write down equity oriented mutual fund also. Because if you invest in equity oriented mutual fund, they are also going to invest in equity shares. So finally the same risk is also applicable to the investor. Then gold is a risky asset. Gold is a risky asset. Silver is a risky asset. Your land is a risky asset because the value can fluctuate and you don't know what will be actual return even though you have some expected return. So now we'll take a break.